Hello everyone, my name is Adam Weezer and I am going to be your host this week on the Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy. Now this program, it's a new one, and what we're going to do is that every once in a while, one of the members of the lore team is going to come in here and basically give you a personal tour of a system through this awesome star map that's been put together for the game. So this week, as you can see, I'm wearing an Operation Pitchfork t-shirt because it felt appropriate considering the system we will be covering. So once again, we're going to start off right here on Earth, and if we back out of the Sol system and do the backspace here, we can bring up the search bar, and we're going to type in this episode's system, which is Vega. So here we go. We are going to head off to the Vega system, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with due to the recent Battle of Vega, Admiral Bishop's speech in front of the Senate. All that has happened because of what has gone on here recently. Now, the Vega system has been one of promise and problems for the UEE throughout the history. As you see, it is here. It's in kind of what we like to call the western front of the Empire. And the promise of this system is right in the center. It is this G-type main sequence star. Now, what's special about this star is that it is brighter than 90% of the other stars in the entire galaxy. What's also very special about it is that it's very similar to our sun, to the star that's at the heart of the Sol system. So when humanity found this star out there amidst everything, they got very excited by the prospects. One of the other very important things that made this so promising was that the system also has 2 habitable planets within the green band. So this star, along with these 2 planets, made it a very intriguing system for humanity. The problem with the Vega system has always been that it has one jump that goes directly into Vanduul space. As you can see here, it connects to the Virgil system. Now, for the first few hundred years of Vega's existence, the Virgil system was actually a human-controlled system. That all changed in 2737 with the fall of Virgil. When that happened, Vega literally became the front line of the conflict between humanity and the Vanduul. So for over 200 years, the people of Vega lived in constant fear that at any moment, Vanduul could come through this jump here from Virgil and attack the system. Prior to the fall of Virgil, Vega was a pretty prosperous system. There were a lot of people there was a lot of excitement going on, but the second that the Vanduul were on the doorstep, people fled from the system very fast. They say that at a certain point, the best business in Vega was actually getting people out of Vega. So basically for 200 years, this system lived in constant fear until maybe 10 to 20 years ago when people started to think, hey, you know what? Aramis is a beautiful place. It's a naturally just stunning planet, and the real estate's cheap there. People started to move back in. The vast and verdant fields produced a lot of crops, which led to a thriving culinary scene on the planet. They even were in the midst of applying for recognition from the UEE Senate when, unfortunately, the Vanduul finally attacked. This happened on October 5th, 2945, the Vanduul came through. It's now known as the Battle of Vega II, and basically attacked Aramis. You see we've got the nice little icon here indicating that attack. So on this day, citizens and civilians of this planet would have walked out into the streets of the capital, New Corvo, looked up into the sky, and they would have seen ships falling and falling from the sky and crashing into the city on fire. They would have seen Vanduul raiders kind of running through the streets. And when they looked up, besides this massive space battle, they would have seen a Vanduul kingship sitting in the system, which is the first time in over about 70 years that a Vanduul kingship had ever been in UEE space. The last time prior to Vega was in 2871 at the fall of Caliban. So besides seeing that Vanduul kingship up in space, they also got to see these beautiful planetary rings that surround Aramis. So Aramis is going to be a very, very beautiful planet from the ground. You've got these planetary rings, and you've got 2 shepherd moons that are also going to be sitting up in the sky. Now, just an interesting science fact, the planetary rings are there basically because of something called the Roche limit or the Roche radius. And the simplified version of this is that the Roche radius is where the gravity of the planet of Aramis overpowers all other gravity. So if, for example, you are a natural satellite, a chunk of a moon, a piece of space debris on the outside of the Roche radius, then you have your own gravity. You'll draw other things to you, and that's how moons kind of coalesce. But if you're a natural satellite that is caught inside the Roche radius, let's say maybe you were a piece of moon that hit the planet and broke up in atmosphere, or maybe these are parts of the early protoplanetary disk that created the system that never got pulled into the planet. Under the right conditions, they can get caught up here on the very edge of the system and give these very beautiful, picturesque planetary rings. Now, Aramis isn't only beautiful from the sky, it's also very beautiful on the ground. This is a naturally habitable planet, so it has its own flora and its own fauna. It did need a little bit of terraforming to be able to get humanity to be habitable there, but luckily that terraforming wasn't strong enough to actually eradicate a lot of the natural foliage you'll find there. So it's also going to be a very beautiful planet from the ground. With that in consideration, you can see why over the past few years the people of Aramis have strove to receive recognition from the UEE Senate to actually have a voting right there. Everyone seemed to think that they were on the fast track for this to happen, and when the attack of Vega happened, of Vega 2, their basically application was rubber stamped. So it wasn't long before Edward Emile became the very first UEE senator from the planet of Aramis, and he decided to use his introductory speech in front of the Senate for a little bit of political theater. Instead of talking about the planet, he decided to close debate and call for a vote on the UEE going to war against the Van Duel. So that's a fun little fact. The first act by a senator from Aramis was to vote for war against the Van Duel. Another fun little thing about this planet here, Aramis, is that it is home to the Cargo Olympics. So for all you haulers and traders out there that are good at moving cargo around, this is where the annual Cargo Olympic event would occur. Unfortunately, the recent attacks have put this year's event in question, but I believe I have it under good authority that there might be some more answers as to what's happening to that very soon. So again, that is Aramis, which is Vega 2. It's about Earth size right here. Let's step back out. Let's go up to Vega 1, which is on the inner part of the system. Now, this is a dwarf planet. There's not too much exciting about it. It's about the size of Pluto. The UE like to call this a one probe planet. They sent one unmanned probe down to this thing, took it out, checked, did some scans, realized there was nothing there to mine, there was nothing there really worth our time, so it's kind of been forgotten and it just sits here in the inner part of the system. So as we back out, let's go to Vega 3, which is the other really, really interesting planet in the system, and this planet is called Selene. As you see, this is a little bit further out from the sun, but it's still in the green band. It's a little bit larger than Earth, and it is not naturally habitable, which means that humans had to terraform this planet to be able to live on it. Now, this place has been the true power center of the Vega system for the past few centuries. The military had a lot of establishments, or they first claimed Aramis and kind of moved in there first. So a lot of the private industry and private businesses came in and took over this planet of Selene. The biggest city on Selene is a city called Titus, and it has a pretty massive population for what is considered a frontier system, a frontier planet. Titus was thriving prior to the Van Duel threat appearing on Vega's doorstep. So when you see the city from the air, it's a massive expanse of buildings, but once you get down to ground level, what you'll realize is that a lot of the buildings on the outer edge of the city are abandoned or partially constructed, were maybe stopped mid-construction due to the Van Duel threat. Vega's population Selene's population of Titus is still high, but it's definitely not as high as it used to be. An interesting point about Selene is that the Governor's Council of the planet grew concerned after the fall of Virgil in 2737. They were worried that there were people on this planet who didn't want to leave, that couldn't afford to leave. They worried what would happen if the Vanduul ever attacked. So their solution was to create a gun company called Caustic Arms. Now this was a private-public partnership between the Governor's Council of Selene and private interest to make affordable and effective energy weapons to sell to the people of this planet in case of a Vanduul incursion. Now this plan worked well at arming the people of Titus and the people of Selene, but it also obviously led to a spike in crime. Even worse, in 2753, an executive for Caustic Arms was caught triggering Vanduul sensor alarms deep out in the system as a way to drive sales for the guns. When the Governor's Council of Selene realized this was going on, they understood they needed to get out of the gun business and ended up selling their stake in the company to completely private interests. So the private interests realized they had very effective and very cheap guns on their hands that would be liked all around the empire. So what they ended up doing is they took Caustic Arms, the maker of the Devastator shotgun and the Firestorm cannon, they took them and they basically exported them all around the universe, which is why you're going to be seeing a lot of those guns in the game that all started from here in Selene. The other interesting thing about this planet is that it's home to a group of people called the Descendants of Orion, and they are, as you would expect, and as my Operation Pitchfork t-shirt hints at, they are people who originally lived in the Orion system, or descendants of people who originally lived in the Orion system who want to get the system back. And they do this by basing raids in the Vanduul systems from this planet. So let's say you're a Vanduul swarm fanatic, let's say you have interest in testing your mettle against in Vanduul territory. You can come find the Descendants of Orion on Selene. They're not going to pay much. It's going to be very dangerous, but it's definitely going to be a good way for you to get some dogfighting action. So as we back away from Selene, we go further out into the system, and what we have here is the Vega Belt Alpha. Now this, for an asteroid belt, is probably a little bit more dense than most, but there's still not enough planetary mass here, or not enough mass to have formed a planet. Technically, this asteroid belt is owned by the UEE, but it's been picked pretty clean over the years, so there's not really patrols of it. A lot of beginning miners actually make their way out to this asteroid belt as a way to practice, maybe find a few pockets that have been overlooked. But yeah, so it's a good place to maybe do some practice runs. There's not going to be a lot of wealth here if you're willing to go check it out. And finally, out on the very edge of the system, we have Vega 4. Now, Vega 4 is a super Jupiter, which is the least common class of planets in our entire galaxy. So what makes a super Jupiter special? Well, it's about the same size as our Jupiter. It's just more massive. It just means it's more dense. So yeah, it's a big, beautiful planet that's going to be dotted with fuel refinery stations kind of in the outer reaches that you'll be able to swing by and maybe get some fuel for your ship. So again, this has been the tour of the Vega system, 4-planet system, 1 asteroid belt with 4 jump points coming into it, the dangerous jump point from Virgil, 2 that go to unclaimed systems of Null and Oberon, and it has 1 connection to UE space right here in Bremen. Again, my name's Adam Weezer, a member of the lore team, and this was your Lore Maker's Guide to the Vega system.
And he did this whole thing without reading anything. There's no notes on the screen. I'm so proud of him. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, no problem.